Welcome to ValueVest Daily. Okay, today we have an absolutely massive explainer lined up for you guys. We are breaking down literally one of the biggest, most aggressive single stock moves we have seen in the entire biotech sector this year. CRNX Pharmaceuticals, ticker symbol CRNX. This stock basically exploded overnight, surging nearly 98% after Vertex Pharmaceuticals came out and announced a mammoth $10 billion all-cash acquisition. And look, this isn't just a flashy headline to scroll past. This is actually Vertex's largest deal ever. It shines a glaring spotlight on rare disease innovation, the absolute sheer power of oral drug breakthroughs, and honestly, it really begs the question, are we looking at an incoming, broader biotech M&A wave? So today, we are unpacking the underlying science behind their lead asset, we're mapping out the full pipeline value, analyzing exactly why Vertex paid such a staggering premium, and what this all means for your sector rotation plays. So, let's dive right into this. But first, a quick reminder of our ground rules here. Not financial or tax advice. Biotech deals, as you probably know, move incredibly fast, and they always carry risks, including, deal closing uncertainty. So always do your own thorough research and consult professionals. Markets are volatile, especially in this biotech space. This deep dive is purely for your educational advantage. All right, here is our roadmap for today. Section 1, the $10 billion deal. 2, the paltusotine science. 3, the pipeline. 4, the biotech M&A wave. 5, valuation and DCF. And 6, risks and final thoughts. Let's start right at the top with part 1, the $10 billion deal and unpacking that jaw-dropping 98% surge. So the sheer velocity of this market move was just stunning. On July 6, 2026, Vertex agreed to buy CRNX for $85 per share entirely in cash. That represents a total equity value of about $10 billion, which, nets out to roughly $8.8 billion when you go ahead and account for their cash on hand. This locked in a roughly 100% premium, literally sending the stock surging from the low 40s straight up into the 80s almost instantaneously. Now, Vertex is financing this massive acquisition using cash on hand alongside committed bridge financing, and they're expecting the whole shebang to close in Q3 of 2026. But the real question is, why? Why did Vertex pay up so aggressively for this? Well, they view this as acquiring absolutely best-in-class endocrinology assets with an estimated $5 billion peak sales opportunity. And to really grasp that $5 billion number, we have to look past the financial headline and dig deep into the actual tangible science.
That brings us to Section 2 of our deep dive, the science of paltusotine, or Palsinify, and how it's effectively ending needle fatigue for patients.
To truly appreciate the multi-billion-dollar value of a drug, you really have to understand the nightmare of the disease that it treats, right? CRNX's lead commercial asset is Palsinify, which is the brand name for the drug paltusotine. It was developed primarily for a condition called acromegaly. Now, acromegaly is a rare, severe endocrine disease. It's typically caused by a tumor sitting right on the pituitary gland, and that tumor causes the body to secrete an excess amount of growth hormone, or GH. And this overproduction, it leads to highly elevated levels of something called IGF-1. The daily complications for these patients are just brutal. We're talking enlarged hands, feet, and facial features, severe joint pain, chronic headaches, debilitating fatigue, and really serious cardiovascular issues. It's life-altering. Palsinify is the very first once-daily oral treatment approved by the FDA for adults with acromegaly who have had, an inadequate response to surgery or for whom surgery simply isn't an option at all. For a very, very long time, the standard of care for acromegaly has been highly painful monthly injections. Patients suffer from deep, debilitating needle fatigue and really frustrating fluctuating hormone control between those monthly doses. Think about the burden of that. Paltusotine replaces all of that with a highly convenient once-daily oral pill. Patient impact statistics show this leads to vastly improved adherence to the medication because, obviously, taking a pill is so much easier. It gives them much steadier hormone control throughout the entire month, and ultimately a significantly better quality of daily life.
So how does it actually work inside the human body? Well, paltusotine is an oral SS2 agonist. SS2 stands for somatostatin receptor subtype 2. What this drug does is beautifully simple in concept, but let me tell you, it is incredibly difficult to engineer in a lab. It actively mimics the body's natural hormone, somatostatin. By mimicking this hormone, it successfully binds to those specific SS2 receptors located right there on the pituitary somatotroph cells. Once it binds there, it essentially hits the brakes. It inhibits the release of the excess growth hormone, which thereby lowers those dangerous IGF-1 levels we talked about. Phase 3 trials provided incredibly compelling clinical data, definitively proving that this pill maintains biochemical and symptom control when patients make the switch over from those painful injectables.
Now, the absolutely crucial point here is precision. A lot of drugs in the biotech space fail or cause terrible side effects because they are what we call messy, meaning they float around and bind to a lot of different receptors in the body that they just aren't supposed to touch. Paltusotine is incredibly clean. It boasts a massive, greater than 4,000-fold selectivity for the SS2 CERT receptor over other receptor subtypes. Think of it like a key that only fits one highly specific lock out of thousands. That massive precision is vital because it dramatically reduces off-target effects. Long-term data confirmed that this precision leads to durable, consistent control even after 2 full years of treatment, with highly favorable tolerability. It's exactly why many patients in the trials heavily preferred the oral option.
And why is 70% oral bioavailability such a big deal? Well, because historically, creating an oral version of these types of therapies was considered nearly impossible. Unlike older, clunky peptide-based injectables, paltusotine is a small molecule. Because it has such excellent oral bioavailability, hovering right around 70%, the drug formulation doesn't even need complex absorption enhancers. Patients literally just swallow a pill, and their body naturally absorbs 70% of the active ingredient directly into their system. This exact oral innovation is exactly why Vertex paid a $10 billion premium. When you can combine massive, game-changing convenience with high efficacy in a rare disease space, you generate phenomenal commercial value.
But CRNX isn't just a one-hit wonder. Let's move to Section 3, the pipeline, and look at what lies beyond their lead asset. Vertex is actually buying a deep, rare endocrinology franchise here, not just a single approved drug. While Palsonify is already FDA approved and de-risked, they also have Atomoland, a first-in-class oral MC2R antagonist. This one is advancing in Phase 3 trials for classic congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH, and it's in Phase 2 for Cushing's syndrome. Now, in CAH, patients suffer from enzyme deficiencies that lead to dangerous excess androgens and insufficient cortisol. The old standard treatment relies on high-dose glucocorticoids, which unfortunately cause terrible cascading side effects. Atomoland comes in and blocks the ACTH pathway directly at the adrenal gland. This rapidly reduces the excess androgens while allowing patients to take much lower, normal, physiologic doses of glucocorticoids. Furthermore, they have other pipeline programs targeting even more endocrine indications, really expanding the entire franchise's reach.
Vertex highlighted a combined peak sales potential of roughly $5 billion across these assets. And, rare diseases like acromegaly and CAH offer incredibly lucrative dynamics for big pharma. They offer orphan drug exclusivity, which means absolutely no generic competition for an extended period of time. Because of the high unmet medical need, they command premium pricing, and they feature highly dedicated, sticky patient communities. These are the exact kind of durable, high-margin, cash cow franchises that massive pharmaceutical companies love to acquire to fuel their own long-term diversification and growth stories.
This perfectly transitions us into Section 4, the broader biotech M&A wave in the context of sector rotation. So let's look at the buyer's motivation for a second. Vertex is diversifying. Vertex is universally known as the absolute dominant, undisputed force in cystic fibrosis treatments, with mega blockbusters like Trikafta and Kefitria. But eventually, every single pharma giant has to look over the horizon. You have to plan for the future. This $10 billion deal forcefully diversifies them into a totally new domain, endocrinology and rare diseases. Crucially, it adds immediate near-term commercial revenue because Palsonify is already FDA approved and ready to go, while simultaneously handing them a very mature late-stage pipeline with atumelnant.
Now, let's zoom out to the entire biotech sector. What are the macro catalysts driving this M&A wave we're seeing? First off, large pharma companies are aggressively seeking external innovation right now to offset their own impending patent expirations. Second, when you see 100% all-cash premium like this, it sends a massive signal of immense institutional confidence in the broader sector's valuation. Third, there is a clear, undeniable laser focus on rare diseases and oral delivery platforms. Because of high-profile, aggressive deals like this one, we are seeing a massive sector rotation. Smart money always rotates into areas with fresh catalysts. If you are an investor out there, you want to be looking at biotechs with late-stage rare disease assets or unique oral innovations, because they might suddenly become very attractive acquisition targets themselves, or just see their own stock prices naturally re-rate upward.
Which leads us directly into Section 5, valuation, the DCF model, and the big question on everyone's mind. Is the stock a buy right now?
Okay, when assessing individual stocks, we generally always look to discuss if it is a buy based on the discounted cash flow, or DCF model, right? We project out the cash flows, discount them back, and find fair value. But a traditional DCF analysis is essentially irrelevant for CRNX at this exact moment. Why? Because the company is now a locked-in acquisition target, trading right up against a hard ceiling. Prior to this deal, sure, the market was valuing CRNX as a speculative clinical biotech trying to heavily discount its future cash flows based on trial risks. But Vertex just stepped in and stamped a definitive, non-negotiable $10 billion price tag on it, completely validating the science and that $5 billion peak sales potential. The massive premium paid reflects Vertex's unique strategic view of the asset's commercial value. Therefore, running a DCF right now to try and find, say, $120 or $150 per share intrinsic value is kind of a moot point because the stock price is firmly, structurally capped by the $85 per share all-cash deal price that Vertex has contractually agreed to pay.
So, instead of a DCF play, what we have right now is a classic merger arbitrage situation. CRNX stock closed the prior session in the low 40s and, boom, exploded toward that $85 deal price immediately. Post-surge, the stock is trading incredibly close to the offer price with a very minimal spread. What that tight spread tells us is that the market has exceptionally high confidence that this deal will actually close without a hitch. For current investors, until that expected Q3 2026 closing date, this is primarily just an arbitrage play. The tiny little gap between the current trading price and $85 is simply the market pricing in the remaining deal risk premium, meaning the very slight chance of regulatory blocks or some unexpected shareholder pushback. Any massive long-term value created post-close from these amazing drugs will ultimately accrue to Vertex shareholders. So, if you are an investor looking for outsized returns, the real play here is sector rotation, looking for other high-quality rare disease names that might be the very next target on Big Pharma's shopping list.
Let's move to our final section, risks and final thoughts, because, as always, we need to look at both sides of the coin.
Look, even in a massively successful buyout scenario like this, risks do remain. A balanced objective view requires us to acknowledge that any $10 billion pharmaceutical merger could face heightened regulatory scrutiny from bodies like the FTC. Now, that being said, the lack of direct product overlap between Vertex and CRNX makes approval highly likely. There's also always the remote potential for shareholder pushback if some feel that the $85 price somehow undervalues the long-term pipeline, though, let's be real, 100% cash premium usually quiets that down pretty fast. Post-merger, there will absolutely be integration hurdles for Vertex as they absorb a new commercial team. And, of course, the broader biotech sector remains highly volatile to macro shifts in interest rates and capital flows. But, on the very positive side, the all-cash structure of this specific deal significantly reduces many of the typical financing risks that you'd usually associate with messy stock-for-stock M&A deals.
So, to summarize our overall thesis today, this acquisition is a textbook, perfect example of Big Pharma aggressively stepping up and acquiring highly differentiated, patient-centric science. The oral SST2 agonist and the ACTH antagonist platforms represent real, tangible, life-changing innovation that drastically improves patient lives by eliminating painful injections and harmful steroid dependence. The massive premium paid here clearly, definitively confirms that the broader market sees substantial, undeniable value in these scientific breakthroughs. This deal essentially pours rocket fuel on the entire biotech M&A narrative.
So, what do you guys think? Is this the start of a much bigger biotech M&A wave? Are there specific rare disease or oral innovation plays you are watching right now in your own portfolios? Please subscribe, like, and share ValueVest Daily for daily learning opportunities before you put your money to work. Please put in a comment if you want us to deep dive into any specific high-risk/reward opportunities. Stay focused, stay data-driven, and we will see you in the next explainer.